Hi, I'm Rick Lobdell. Welcome to another episode of Concrete Mystique, the podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by the Decorative Concrete Expo. The 2025 Smackdown winner, David Rebello, is on the show today. For some reason, Jeff Kurt thinks I called him.
Well, that was what made me think of the shot. Was the one podcast you put out there where you said that you and Jeff Kurt do a
He's
shot
calling me right
Friday.
now. Hold on a second. Hello?
What's up, man?
I'm in the middle of, where's my video? I'm in the middle of starting a podcast with David Rebello. I did not call you.
Jeff, where's your shot?
You didn't?
No.
Huh. Maybe that was from the other day. I don't know. I don't have my glasses on.
Sure.
I thought I'd... Okay. All right, well, do your thing. Sorry.
That's all right, man. We're about to do a shot. We were just talking about doing shots together, but you're in your car, so you can't join us.
No, I'm going to the gym, actually. I was messing around outside, so yeah, one day a weekend, pretty good for me.
I was really drunk that night, dude. That was way too much.
Friday was fun. Yeah.
All right.
I went to bed soon after, so.
We'll chat later. All right, bye.
Yep, sounds good. See you, buddy.
Yeah, that was a rough night Friday. We talked for like 3 hours.
Where does Jeff live?
Texas, like southeast of Dallas.
Okay.
Somewhere like that. I don't know. Yeah, we were talking, and it's funny because we were talking about the idea of doing a podcast together because he's so shy, I didn't think he'd want to do it.
Right.
And then he asked that, and I was like, well, we can do it right now. And we hesitated, and then we started drinking, and he's like, we should have been recording the whole time. And I was like, well, I mentioned that, but now I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So now we got to recreate everything we did. All right. Ready?
Yeah.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Concrete Mystique, the podcast. Today, I have the one and only Smackdown champion of 2025 with me today. So excited about talking to him, Mr. Dave Rebello. Now, it is Rebello, right? Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, Rebello, yep.
Okay, good. It is great to talk to you again. Great to see you again. Congratulations, first and foremost, for winning.
Oh, thank you.
And how has life been? The great thing about it is, we talked about getting together after the show, and then I had to travel for a couple weeks. So I thought it was going to be actually cool to go a couple weeks later and reflect on it more than the immediate moment of having that moment for you anyway. So now that you've had a couple weeks to reflect on it, has it changed anything? Does it not matter anymore? Life is normal again? Or you still act like you're the champ when you walk around your team?
I mean, life is mostly normal, but I mean, constantly seeing people and, they're still saying, oh, hey, I saw you won the Smackdown. Congratulations, which is pretty cool. But, as far as everything else goes, the weather's finally getting nice. So we're just starting to get ready to get our season kicked off. Yeah.
And the spring just started last Thursday, and we were in the 40s in Nashville. It is 74 today right now with like 90-mile-an-hour winds, and we have a nasty storm coming in a couple hours.
Oh, nice.
So, yay, spring.
Yeah.
I literally had frost on my windows Friday morning, the day after spring started.
Right, which I'm sure is not too often for you guys this time of year.
No, not at all. So we're going to start the show off with the fact that you were like, hey, let's do a shot together, because I was talking about Jeff Kurt and I doing that. So You said you're a whiskey fan, right? Is that what you were talking about earlier?
I got Redbreast Irish whiskey here.
That's awesome. So I grabbed my whiskey I like. I do like Irish whiskey also, but this is Eagle Rare. I don't know if you ever had that before.
Okay, yep.
It's really good. So cheers to the champ. Thanks for joining me on the show. And let's get this started. Whiskey is a different breed.
For sure.
I'm more of a tequila person. My tequila is way smoother. Actually, that is pretty smooth.
Oh, red breast is pretty good.
I'll have to try that sometime.
Yeah.
Always into trying new stuff when that comes to stuff like that. Now that I messed my voice up from doing that shot.
That's all right.
So, okay. I like to start the show off all the time with asking, when was the first time we met? Was it at the class or had you met me before that?
Um, I think that was the first time we met was at the class. Um, I got of course, a rundown on you from my friend Emil because he knew I was going out there, and he goes, "Oh, you're gonna get to meet Rick, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess." He's like, "Oh yeah, Rick's a good time, you know." I said, "All right." So he said you guys have been friends a long time, so
Yeah, he took one of my very first classes at Concrete Decor.
yeah, he told me, yeah,
Yeah. And we've known each other. In fact, he was the first one to take the engraver and try to go backwards with it. And I was like, no. And he does it all the time still. And it drives me crazy. I'm like, oh, I can't do that because to me, it doesn't go straight. It might just veer left or right when you go back a little bit to be, I get his idea, but I was like, that's just not the way you do this. And
yeah,
that's the great thing about it is once you learn a couple tricks, you can go do your own tricks after that. It's not all about just mine all the time.
right. Well, and of course, from the class, I remember how meticulous you are about developing habits. And then,
Yes.
once you have these good habits, you just stick to that routine.
And do you have those, speaking of?
Um, to a degree,
Yeah.
not as stringent as you were, but yeah,
I was talking to one of my old employees the other day, and we hadn't talked in like 13 years, and I thought he hated me. And I'm gonna get him on the show soon too, and I thought he totally hated me, and because we didn't have kind of a fallout at the end there,
yeah,
and it was really more financial for him. It wasn't me. It was because he was in a tough place, having a newborn kid, and just wasn't making the money he could, and I wasn't the perfect answer. We had a great relationship. It was just tough.
right,
And so when I met with him, he said, "You have no idea the things I still do to this day because of you." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like I was completely caught off guard. And he was like, "I still can't watch somebody use a brush without me teaching them how to use it." He's
yeah.
like, "It's the
Dip
hardest
in
thing to
and
watch."
shake it off 3 times so you don't drip. And yeah, I remember.
It caught me off guard. I was like, "Really?" And then coincidentally, there is a picture of him holding a brush on a job site. And then we took like a silly picture with him brushing, and I was on his case about how bad he was brushing that day, and I took a picture because of it. And we get a kick out of it every time it comes up on my memories and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It's just those little things like you never knew that he was paying attention to, and here that's a big memory for him every single year too. I thought that was pretty cool.
right, yeah, yeah,
So okay, with let's talk about the class for a minute, just because you have taken my class now. I joke about the idea of the fact that, of course, I'm always super proud of all my students, and I was talking to Jeff Kurt about this the other night about when do you not become my student, and I said never.
I would agree with that. Yeah,
And he didn't agree with me. He's like, but you move on to your own thing. I said it doesn't matter, because whether I influenced you a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit or a lot, the fact is that you now know how I communicate, and you now know my philosophy, and you know things that my quirks and stuff like that when it comes to what we do. And we have a different communication because of it. And that will never change. No matter what you do in the future and how good you do with whatever you do, I hope that what I trained you had something to do with what you did or not. It doesn't matter to me. It's more about the philosophy behind it all, and the passion behind it all, and that care that I always want to see the people that I've helped succeed. And I feel proud of them for doing that. So first and foremost, of course, I'm super proud of you for winning the Smackdown. It has nothing to do with me. I'm not sitting there saying my student won because of me. It has nothing to do with me whatsoever. It's not that. It's more that we have a different communication now because we had that moment together, and that's all that matters to me. And of course, I'm proud of everybody that I've worked with, and I love everybody coming and working with me. And I mean, for me, the Decorative show is huge because just in the Smackdown alone, I had 8 students in it.
yeah. That's huge. Yeah,
I
that's
had
pretty
two
cool.
or three other students doing the classes, the trainings and stuff like that. Everywhere you look, I've got students all over the place part of the show. That's huge to me. No matter what I do in my future, no matter what happens next, I love the fact that I have all these people back there that we have a different understanding than everybody else in that room, and I think that that's amazing. And it's I don't know how else to say it, but I think it's an awesome opportunity for me to be able to sit back and watch this world that I've helped. Doesn't mean I've created it. I'm not that egotistical. Well, I mean, I am, but that's not the point. But I'm a part of that future, and I think that that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we're a great example of being a student, right? Like, I don't consider myself or the guys that I work with, we're no experts at any of this. We're still learning. We're still trying to improve. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know all the answers to everything, because I'm not even close. And so if you get that attitude of like, oh, I'm not Rick's student anymore because, I won the Smackdown, or I did this, or I achieved that. To me, that's just an arrogance that, I have no room for that in my team or in my life, because we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are if we didn't have people teaching us, if we weren't willing to go and learn from people that we know were better than us or knew more than us.
And that doesn't mean that you'll never learn more than me or know more than me.
Well,
doesn't
maybe,
mean that you'll pass the master, but you learn from the master in the first place. That's for all of those. I agree with you. I'm the same way too. I mean, a couple years ago, I was resealing a project at one of my biggest projects of all time in Chattanooga. And my favorite professor of all time, he was in philosophy. He changed my life forever. That he's always going to be my professor. There's never a moment where I've passed him. No matter how you look at it, it's because of him I'm here. 100% because of his philosophy and what it taught me how to write better, how to speak better, how to debate better. There's so many things he did for me. I will always be his student. There's no doubt. There's no other way to look at it, no matter what happens in my life. And I've got to hang out with a few of my professors over the last couple of years, traveling back in time and going to some places and things like that. And every single time it's an honor to be with them. It's not, oh, hey, and, look what I'm doing now. I'm better than you. No, it's always amazing to hang out with my professors because they did make an influence in my life and my future. And they did help me with what I'm doing to this day without a shadow of a doubt.
Right. I mean, you probably remember we're not, we haven't been in the concrete industry a long time. We're not concrete guys that have been doing this forever.
Some of us have still never poured concrete in their life.
Right. So, but without mentors and people that were willing to give up knowledge that they had obtained over years and years of doing it, without those people around us willing to share all that knowledge and help us out and teach us, I mean, we would never get to where we are. It would have taken, until I was ready to retire to get to this point. But fortunately, and Decorative was a huge part of it. We've come across a great group of what I would consider friends now at this point, that were willing to share all that stuff and like, hey, don't do this. I did that once and it was a huge mistake, So you get to avoid all of those road hazards from the knowledge that other people have already gained. And the fact that they're willing to share that versus being like, figure it out yourself. I had to. I mean, that's a huge blessing for guys like me. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because,
I agree. And I try my hardest to show people all the mistakes I made in a roundabout way, and you were there in the class. How many times did I talk about the horrible employees I had over and over? I have stories beyond stories of the mistakes I have made, and I'm here to help you not make those.
Yeah.
I've got more stories of the mistakes I've made than I have of the wins, honestly.
Well, that's when you learn the most, right? Is when you make mistakes, is like, oh, I'm not doing that again. That sticks in your head.
And that's one of the hardest things about being the boss is sometimes you've got to let your employees make a mistake to learn from it. Because if you always just tell them how to do it, they're never going to learn. And that's a big struggle for me because I can't stand there and watch you screw up.
Yep.
You know that from the class. I can't let you do it in the class. Imagine being my employee. It's so hard to stand there and let you make a mistake, knowing that you're making it right now, just so I can correct it for you in a minute or, stop you. And it's really hard to do, but if you let them, and it doesn't cost you a fortune financially
Right.
to redo things.
Right.
In that moment, if you can let them fail for a second so that they can see what they did wrong, they're going to learn faster. But that's a really hard thing to do in what we do when you are in the moment and there is no turning back. There is no redo on anything that we do. And that's one of the
Right.
hardest things about our job as the owner or the boss or however you want to look at it. Because, I remind my employees all the time, I'm hard on you because I care.
Yeah.
And if you leave today because you're mad at me, I still have to finish this job with or without you.
Yeah.
The job doesn't stop whether you're here or not. I would rather you be here helping me. But if you're ticked off and you're not willing to do this, then I still have to finish the work because my name's on everything.
Right. There's an expectation from the client, right? And that falls on you or I or whoever's running the job. So yeah, there's a big responsibility there. So for sure, I think trying to find that line of letting guys figure things out for themselves and not be like, here, give me that, let me show you. That's a tough thing to figure out. I'm not so sure I'm very good at that one yet.
No, I'm still not. You
Yeah.
know that. I was hard on everybody.
Yeah.
I'm not. I never was because I don't want to waste time. It's a tough one. And I've done it. Toward the end of my career, I was willing to walk away and come back and find the mistakes and explain it to them after they did it. I couldn't do it if I was sitting there watching them, but if I could leave
Right.
the job site and let them do their thing and then come back and critique them, I had a better chance.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
it's drove me crazy because I knew what I was walking into every single time too. Now, one thing with us talking about the training classes, because you're a perfect example, like you were saying, because well, first of all, I did watch your interview on what was it, concrete everything, show us your whatever
Share your knowledge.
that
Yeah.
group, yeah. First of all, I appreciate the fact when you were talking about the different training classes, not only did you say I took Rick Lobdell's, but you're like, that was an awesome class. So first of
It
all,
was.
thank you for that compliment. Because
Sure.
the other ones you just said I took these classes, but this one was awesome. So I appreciate that little call out.
Yeah.
But I saw the other day someone post about how ridiculous it is that all these people are taking 2-day training classes and you're not learning anything from them. And I almost chimed in as an instructor to go, that's bullshit. I know without a shadow of a doubt my students are learning a lot. And one of the points to that too is maybe they misunderstand how classes go. And you've never really reached out to me. T did a few times and stuff after the class.
Right.
But once you take the class, you have full access to me or to any of your instructors, not just me. I don't understand that a 2-day class doesn't teach you anything and it's a waste of your time and you need to do a 2-week training class. Like anybody has 2 weeks to pay for going to a class for and getting away from their company. Like that's ridiculous to me that it has to go that far in the first place. But, with all the classes you've taken, how many times have you had to take multiple classes or how do you look at that and what's your thoughts on that kind of bold statement to say 2-day classes are a waste of everybody's time?
I think that's just crazy. That just means that they're not, they're not willing to learn, or I don't know. I can't see how anybody would think that way. I mean, I definitely don't have 2 weeks to give. It's hard enough for us to find, 2-3 days to go. And so when you do, I appreciate the fact that we're going to do multiple projects in that time span, and we're going to learn multiple aspects of whatever the class is designed around, And then, I feel like if you are thinking that you're not going to get anything out of it, then, then you're not going to, because your attitude is already off. You know what I mean? Without the classes that we've taken, we would just be pouring broom finish stuff. That would be where we were at, and I'm not willing to go. There's a lot of guys out there that'll go do stamp work or staining and designing or whatever else, overlays, anything, without having the knowledge to really know what they're doing. And I wasn't one of those guys. I'm not one of those companies. Like, we have a reputation, and that's pretty much what we base everything around. Is that our reputation is up here, and that's what we expect, and anything less than that is unacceptable. We'll go redo the job because that's what they expected from us, and that's what's always expected from us. So that's what we have to deliver. So when we started getting into the decorative stuff, it was like, well, we have to know what we're doing. You know what I mean? So we started taking the classes. Even after we took the classes, like, all right, let's pour a slab outside the shop, or let's go, we're going to cut and stain and design this, in the basement of my brother's house or wherever. We were just finding people that were like, just pay for the materials. We'll do everything for free. We just need to hone our skills. And like, we learned so much at the classes, which is great. But then you really want to make sure that you can deliver before you are charging a customer. You know what I mean? So we would go take the classes, and then we would, once we got to the point where we felt comfortable, so that looks really good. All right, well, let's start selling it then.
Not only that, but you actually have examples to use of projects you did while you're building that honing your ability to do that kind of stuff. It's a very interesting point, which is that is something I brought up in the class too. That's the hardest part about what we do. You've got to have somewhere to start. Yeah. And I had a few clients call me afterward, or a few students call me afterward and go, well, I'm struggling finding a starting point and I want to do all these things. And I'm like you said it perfectly. That doesn't mean you're going to do it for money. You don't want to lose money necessarily, but you've got to find a way to find those projects, to do a couple, to get them under your belt so you can use them to your advantage. Even if it is saying, look, here's my first project I ever did. Here's my third project. Look how much I've advanced. You're going to be my fourth one. And you're showing them progress even too. I think that's a positive. One of my biggest things is the more involved your clients are, the better the outcome of the job. I'm not one of those people that says, oh yeah, go on vacation and we'll take care of it while you're gone. I want them to see everything that we're doing to a T.
Yeah, and honestly, like if there's something they hate, like catch me now.
Right,
not
exactly.
when I'm done. You know what I mean? Don't keep your mouth shut and then come out here and be like, oh, that's not the way I pictured it or whatever. Like just tell me when we're going along and we'll change it. We'll shift gears or whatever.
And in that point, I've had like two quick stories for me is I had a project before I owned the company that we did where we did an acid stain and a solvent-based sealer inside. And the homeowners went out of town while we did it, and the wife was pregnant. She came back to the house afterward and she smelled the sealer and she freaked out, and we warned them ahead of time. And I didn't know she was pregnant. I wasn't the owner. I just was doing the job.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't pay because the floor was orange. It was too orange because it's acid stain. And so when I bought the company, I had got some, you get those calls or emails and stuff of people going, hey, we're an attorney that can help you get paid on the jobs that they refuse to pay you. And so I answered the call right after I bought the company. I was like, screw it. I got one for you. And I threw it at them. Yeah. And they did win. And they did prove that I was right because the clients weren't there to answer and everything like that. But the thing is I never saw the money. It went to the attorneys and I never even saw it. I never even got paid for it. But I talked to the homeowners because of it to try to resolve it through that. And because they were mad that I was suing them. And I'm like, well, you didn't pay us and we did nothing wrong.
Right.
And it's not our fault that you weren't there. But I learned my lesson from that one and refused to ever do work with the client not being available.
Yep.
And I tell every single one of my clients, if we're in the middle of a project and it's taking longer, it's delayed, it's rain, whatever's going on, and you got to go on vacation, we're waiting until you come back. We're not going to keep going while you're not there. I don't trust the answers if you're not there to answer them first and foremost, because like you just said, anything can change now on the moment. But once we're done, there's no turning back.
Yeah.
And I had one where I did a condo in downtown Nashville, and the client literally worked a block away, and she refused to answer the phone, text, email, nothing. She was so busy with her work, she couldn't even stop in for lunch a block away. Yeah. She couldn't even walk over during lunch to see what I was doing. And I did this full out mural on the floor. I had like a koi pond and I had fish and I had lily pads and all this kind of stuff. It was awesome. And she came back after I'd already coated it with epoxy and everything. And she said, well, I'm sorry, but the lily pads look like Pac-Man. And I'm like, what? I was like, well, yeah, they do, because that's what a lily pad looks like. And she goes, no, they aren't. And I literally brought her a photo that I used and said, what's the difference between the floor and this? And she was like, well, but not all lily pads look like that. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah. And so I got so mad. I went back the next day. I sanded the floor and put metallic epoxy over top of it and never called her again. I was like, if you don't want to pay me, then you don't get this opportunity. And I covered it and never looked back and never answered my phone again, which is ruthless. But I'm like, screw you. You had every opportunity to answer through the whole project and you never once did. So I'm not going to give you a free floor. I'm going to coat it and hide it, and you're never going to get it. And it's underneath that the whole time. Right. Just to drive her more crazy.
Yeah. I think anybody that has been in business for a while can tell you that there are certain customers, and it takes a while to get able to read them, but there are certain jobs that doesn't matter how cool the job sounds. It's like, we do not want to work for them.
Yeah.
I could tell this is somebody that it doesn't matter how much they say they're willing to pay, it is not worth it.
Right.
Or you're not going to get your money,
Right.
But definitely, it took a while for us to figure that out. Me, especially, because I've done some jobs where, it's like, oh man, they might be a pain. I'm like, but that job sounds really cool, and we went after them, and it was never worth it in the long run. So I ended up calling them portfolio jobs. We didn't make any money on it because they were such a pain in the butt. But the end results looked cool. So like, we did it just to get pictures so that we can show it to the next client,
Absolutely. Yeah. There is that point to it too, or filming it. I filmed a lot of my projects and didn't tell my clients and didn't involve them with any of it. Yeah. One thing I never really thought about back then either was like interviewing the clients. I never brought them into it to go, how did this project go in the moment before they had time to absorb it and maybe love it or hate it later or whatever. I never really brought my clients into my videos, and I never really thought about that. I don't know why I never did it. My biggest issue, and I don't know if you have this problem or not, my biggest obsession is after the job is done, I don't ever want to hear from you again. Because if I do, I feel like there's a problem.
Yeah, for sure. Especially
not reseals, not the outdoor maintenance reseals. That's fine. But there's a lot of projects that every time my phone call rings and it's an old client of mine, I freak out. I'm like, now what?
Especially if it's a job I did last year and I see their name pop up on my phone, I'm like, because it's like, what's wrong with it, or what's the problem? What's the issue you're having? What's the complaint? You know what I mean? Yeah. And sometimes it's just like, hey, we love it, we want to add to it, Yeah. But the initial reaction is like, yes. Oh no, your heart kind of skips a beat, and you're like, shoot. I'm like, what happened? What went wrong? Or they're displeased with this, that, or the other thing. And, and then you talk to them, they're like, we love it, we want more. And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, we can do more.
Yeah. Right. No problem.
But that initial reaction, always, when you see that number come up, it's like, oh crap.
And what people don't realize too, from my universe is, my education with art, my background and all that kind of stuff, and doing gallery shows and stuff like that. When someone buys one of my paintings, I never see them again.
Yeah.
I don't get a call back. Like one of the hardest things about what we do, no matter how you look at who does what work, we take a lot of pride in what we do. Doesn't matter if it's painting, if it's a stone wall, I don't care who you are, if it's a tiled floor, I don't care what industry you work in. We all take extreme pride in what we do. We really do.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was weird for me to go from a world of once this baby is gone and I say goodbye to it, I never see it again, to getting a call a year or two later going, there's a problem or there isn't, like you just said.
Yeah.
And it was hard for me, it still is to this day, to ever get all that. I mean, I just had an email 2 weeks ago from an old client of mine that I worked on twice. I redid my own work years later, all positive. Text me and go, hey, I need, a reseal. And I'm like, sorry, I'm retired. I don't do it anymore.
Right.
That's even more frustrating for me now, because it's like, oh, now my artwork needs repaired or needs touched up or needs maintenance, and I'm not even doing that anymore, and I have to trust that somebody else is going to do that. Now that, that's something for you to think about 20 years from now,
Yeah.
of like, when you're finally taken to walk away from that moment, you're still going to hear from your clients expecting those things to be done. And that's a whole nother universe of expectation and complications that you don't see coming, actually.
Right. And then if somebody goes in and screws it up, they're going to call you or I and be like, hey, I don't think they did it right. You know what I mean? And that's like, all right, I guess I'll come look at it, And then
Yeah.
if they didn't do it right, they're going to expect you or I to fix it,
Right. Right. And some of them, I've referred them to friends of mine that I still know. And some of them are like, I got nobody to do this one. It
Well,
depends on what the job is.
referrals are a huge deal. I don't like referring anybody unless I know for a fact that the person I'm referring is going to do exactly what I would do,
Correct.
or is going to deliver what they say they're going to deliver, because that reflects bad on you or I. If I say,
Correct.
oh yeah, you can try this guy. Hey, I tried that guy. He came over and screwed it all up. It looks bad on us.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Or
So
that guy
I,
never got back to me. You sent this guy to me and he's not answering his phone. And then you got to reach out to him and go, dude, I sent you a
yeah,
referral and you're not taking care of it. Like, what the hell?
right.
Like,
Yeah,
it goes both ways. Like, are we helping each other or not? Like, let's go, dude.
yeah,
You got to look professional. If I'm going to send somebody to you, you got to be as professional as me. You
yeah,
do. And there's an expectation there, because we are hardcore about our clients. That is one thing I definitely have learned from my time of knowing you, is you do not screw around. You're not taking the easy way. You're not about just getting the money. You are taking the long, like I tell people all the time, I make this statement all the time. Some companies are sprinting and some companies are running a marathon. And you are, most without a shadow of a doubt, running a marathon just like I did, because you are thinking big picture, long term, the referrals and everything like that. Those sprinters will be in business for a couple of years until they start burning their reputation, because they take the easy way out. They take the short route. They take they do the things that are not going to last, and it
yep,
will eventually catch up to them. And it's
for
only a
sure.
matter of time. 5 years, they're lucky to make it 10 years. Usually about 5 years, they're out of business.
Yep,
But your attention to detail and your decision to care about everything that you're doing and taking those classes to make it better for you will pay off in the long run, as you keep doing this and staying consistent on that, without a shadow of a doubt. That will pay off in the long run. I
right.
promise you.
And we've lost money on jobs
Of course.
where it wasn't necessarily anything that we did wrong, right? We might have done everything right, and the weather conditions weren't right, or whatever. Something happened that was beyond our control. We'll lose money and fix it to keep the customer happy, because they had an expectation and they didn't get that. It wasn't our fault, but that's still what they expected, and that's what we expected to give them, right? So even if it was out of our control, something that we didn't do wrong, we're still going to make it right. If we got to lose money on it, we'll lose money on it. But that way, we know when we show up to a job or we get a phone call, we know that they already are willing to pay what we ask, because everybody that they've talked to says these guys are great. They're the best. You want to hire them because they're stand-up guys. They stand behind their work. They're not going to leave you high and dry. If something goes sideways, they'll take care of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's always been our philosophy. And same thing with the guys that I work with. We tried a few times, like all the hiring companies like Indeed and all those other ones. It's like we could really use a few more guys. So we would try those. And it honestly, it never worked out. Like, it was always bad news. So we don't look for employees. We're only going to do as much as me and the guys that I have can do. And if we get somebody that wants to come work with us, um, typically they need a referral. All right, well, who told you about us? and then I'm going to call that person and say, what's this guy like? Or one of the guys that I already work with. I'll say, hey, this guy is looking for work. Okay, well, does he fit in with us? Is he going to hold that standard? And if they say, yeah, no, he'll definitely hold it. I'm like, all right, well, we'll give him a try. But outside of that, no, yeah, we're not hiring anybody unless somebody that somebody that I know knows them, and we'll give them a good referral.
Yeah, because it's not that you don't need the extra help. It's hard to find the right extra help.
Right. And we've been working too long and keeping a good reputation to have somebody screw it up, So, I mean, that's worked for us. And, we seem to stay busy with if the economy's up or down, some people are like, I'm really slow. We kind of we've maintained through that, and I think that's because we hold that high standard for our work that we put out, and the customers expect a certain level of product, and we always try to deliver that. So
it's funny you say about using Indeed. I watch those commercials every single time, and I'm like, that's not for construction. That's for like office jobs. That's not, just as an example. And there's multiple different companies out there doing that stuff.
There is.
And I never found a way, like back in the day, obviously first and foremost, back in the day, it was like, newspaper ads, finding help, first of all, which I got a good story about that for you. But second of all, once that kind of stuff happened, it was Craigslist for us. And that's like something of the past now. I don't even know anybody that knows what Craigslist is anymore. I don't even know if it still works. I've never had a reason to use it anymore.
It was before all we would find was
we would always find people that were like crackheads or, drug addicts or, stuff like that. I had one guy that worked for me for a couple months, and every half an hour he would disappear to the bathroom for like 15 minutes. And I'd be like, what are you doing? And It took me a couple weeks to figure out he was snorting coke every single time.
Jeez.
And I was like, what and I'm completely against that kind of stuff. Yes, I'm hardcore on a job site. I don't care what you do in your personal time. Yeah. But when it's my time, you are not screwing around with drugs or any alcohol or any of that kind of crap. Yep. And I fired him immediately when I figured out what was going on. When I finally woke, because I'm an idiot about that stuff. I'm naive. Just like you, which we'll get into because of this too. Just like you, I'm from the middle of nowhere.
Right.
I'm not from a big city. I don't know what drugs are. I wasn't, we didn't have that kind of stuff growing up where I was.
No, we didn't. Yeah.
And that's another interesting point of our little connection that we found out about during the class and afterward at the concrete decor shows and everything too. So for the record, for everybody to know, David lives about 20 minutes away from where my dad grew up.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe 30 minutes.
Right.
My dad grew up in small town nowhere, upstate New York. And my grandparents had a cabin on Silver Lake, which is right around the corner from where David lives.
Right, in my backyard.
And that blew our mind. And because literally T lives on the lake or something, doesn't he? Or lives?
So our parents had cottages on the lake.
Yeah, that's what my grandfather did too. Yeah.
Right.
Such a crazy coincidence of like nobody knows what we're talking about right now. No one's like, where the hell is lake? They have no idea. And of all the chances, we ran into each other and we knew about the same exact area, and I grew up going there all the time. I remember fishing that lake all the time. I have a perfect story of a moment with my cousin standing on the dock fishing, and she distracted me, and I dropped my pole in the water, and the water was so clear I could see it down there, but I didn't want to jump in to get it, and I had to, and stuff like that. Like it was a crystal clear lake. It was a beautiful lake, and I remember fishing it all the time. It's about my only memories of the place. I wouldn't know where the cottage was or anything like that. But it's such a crazy connection to have of all things in the world.
It's crazy because there might be maybe 20 houses on that lake. Like there's not a lot.
I have no idea. Yeah, that's a good point. I have no idea because you're talking, that was the 80s,
right?
For me, like that was the 80s when I went there. So I won't remember. That's 40 years ago. Yeah. So, I was barely a teenager back then doing that kind of stuff. Yeah. That's just such a crazy coincidence for us.
Yeah, that was crazy when we found that out.
And then that next Decocrete show, because back then my parents always came to the show. The reason why my parents weren't there these last couple of years is because they moved to Nashville, so they don't live there anymore. You
Yeah.
know, and so they didn't get to go anymore. But during that time, it was like, yeah, hey, check this out. Come meet this person. They're from the same area. I love that stuff. There was one time I was at Walt Disney World, and I was standing in line for the shuttle to go to Walt Disney World from the hotel. And I'm standing there with a guy that literally is a private detective from my dad's hometown. And the other guy is the superintendent of education from my dad's hometown, standing there beside me, waiting for the bus.
Yeah. That's crazy.
You know, where no one would know that. It's small town nowhere. No
Right.
one would know this information. It blew their minds that I knew exactly. And literally, the guy gave me his business card, and it said superintendent of Sydney, New York. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
how is that possible?
Yeah. Yeah, Sydney's that's a pretty small town too.
Very
Not a
small.
lot, not a lot there.
My dad was born on top of the fire department. The apartment
geez.
above the fire department is where my dad was born.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't have a hospital. There's nothing there. So, yeah, we went to Hale Eddy all the time. I don't know if you know where that is either, but there's so many small little areas, little communities right there.
Right.
Yeah, love that fact that we will always have together of not only you've taken my class, but I also know a lot about the area you are at.
Right.
And again, how many people have any clue about how upstate New York is or upstate Pennsylvania? Because you're right on the edge. Are you in Pennsylvania?
I am in Pennsylvania. The road frontage where I live is New York.
That's so crazy. It's that
So
close.
yeah,
I thought it was close.
it's
Yeah.
real close. I have a New York and a PA address.
So back to the Smackdown. How was that for you?
The Smackdown was kind of surreal. We had a pretty good plan going into it, and I thought we would do well. You know what I mean? I said, this is going to be, I think this is going to be a cool thing that we're building. I think that, I think people will be able to relate to it. But I had no idea what to expect from everybody else. You know what I mean? I knew that you were doing something crazy, and it was going to be something that nobody's ever seen before.
Yeah.
And so we got there, started setting up, and it kind of felt pretty good. But by the end of probably Wednesday, I was like, oh, geez, there's a lot of cool stuff here. I was like, I'm not sure really now, because there was. I mean, every one of those guys had an awesome display, and so I was like, well, we'll just keep plugging along and try to make this look as sweet as we can, and try to make sure we do everything in a timely fashion, get it all done by the deadline, and hopefully it goes well. But when we got to when they were announcing it, and they started at number 3. We didn't get number 3, and I was like, all right, that's okay. And then they announced number 2, and once they announced number 2 with Josh, I was like thinking maybe we didn't place at all. I was like,
Yeah.
shoot,
Which is what I
man.
knew right away for me. I knew that right
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, and so that was I started to think. I was like, oh man, I was like, I thought for sure like maybe second or third. I'm like, but to not even that idea that like, because there was other ones there that were like they were pretty cool, and so I was starting to think, man, maybe we didn't place at all, but then we did, and it was great.
Not only did you place, but you almost had double second place in votes.
Yeah,
I mean, they were in the 400s and you were in the 700s. Like,
yeah,
it wasn't even close. It was as crazy as the last election with how far Trump destroyed Harris. It wasn't. There was no controversy of like, oh, it was a little close. No, you slaughtered the competition with voting, which is awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I'd still kind of disbelief, but yeah, it was cool. I mean,
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna make you laugh for a second, as you know me, you know my ego.
yeah,
Amo and I were sitting there Monday night, sitting in my room, having a glass of whiskey together, and he showed me what you guys are going to do, and I said, "Well, that's too relatable. Everybody's done that. Like that's just the same thing as everybody's ever seen. Like what's so special about that?" I was like, "They don't have a chance in hell to win because
yeah,
they're not doing anything new." And he's
right.
like, "No, it's going to be pretty cool. Trust me. Like this is just." He just showed me the sketch, just the basic sketch, and he was like,
Yep.
"No, it's gonna work. It's gonna be awesome." And I'm like, "Okay, sure." And
Yeah.
then, of course, not only do you win, but I sat back and watched the amount of people always around you, and I that's when I realized it. Like when I had mentioned it to you before during the show, I was like, "No, you guys are doing something right because you have people around you more than anybody else."
Yeah.
Everybody was standing around watching you. They weren't
Yep.
walking by, checking it out and going, "That's cool." They were standing there watching.
Yeah.
And you always had a crowd. Compared to everybody else in the competition, you had the largest crowd nonstop. Not just in waves. Everybody else had waves of crowd. You had
Yeah.
a constant crowd. And that was what told me that they were paying attention to you more than anybody else. And that idea of something so relatable worked.
Yeah.
Which,
So I'll be
go
honest,
ahead.
I never noticed that.
No, of course we don't. That's why I
I
said
was
that to you that day. I was like, no, no,
yeah,
no, I'm serious. I've been watching you. That's why
yeah,
I liked, I talked to Jeff about this and you can tell me what you think too. He originally wanted the curtains to be tall so that we couldn't see each other
right.
and so that we didn't know what each other was doing. And I was like, screw that. Once the competition goes, it goes. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I
you know what
enjoyed the fact that I
you're
was able to
doing.
watch everything else and watch that kind of stuff happen because you're right. When you're in the moment, you have no clue what's going on around you at
Yeah.
all. You're too
Yeah.
busy doing your job to pay attention to that.
Yep.
And I'm the same way too. But that's why I said it to you. I was like, no, man, I've watched what's going on, and I knew that you were going there.
Yeah, yeah. Appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, when you know, we felt like we were doing well from talking to everybody coming by and stuff, but it's like anything. I mean, I felt like they're probably saying that same thing to everybody else, you
Yeah, they
know?
were.
Uh,
Correct.
and so like we felt pretty good about it, but at the same time, we're like, I'm not sure really. Don't know what to expect. You know what I mean? Um, so, I mean, but luckily it went the way that we hoped it would, and it was pretty awesome.
Did
Also,
you? Good.
I'm really glad that they didn't do the curtains all the way up because, I mean, let's be honest, like, we're all friends there,
Correct.
and it's nice to like throw a few jabs here and there, or like, hey, looks great over there. It's really cool, because I didn't have time to walk around to your guys' booth. You know what I mean? I'm too busy doing my thing, and then by the time you get done and they say, "All right, you're done working," you're pretty much exhausted and filthy and ready to go home, shower, and get something to eat.
Right.
Um, so it was nice that like there was no dividers, and you could kind of throw a couple jabs here and there to the guys
Or
around you.
or the fact of if I needed electric, like because we were fighting for electric the whole time between the two of us,
Yeah, yep,
and we had to communicate about that. It would have been harder to do if we didn't see each other.
right,
That kind of helped a lot too. And anything like the grows, if I needed something like I forget what I asked from them, blower, I think it was a blower, or Rachel because she was holding some of the solvents that I needed, and
yeah,
we were using the same stains or something. There was always something between all of us that either we needed something or just a little detail, or just like you said, jabs at each other because I was fucking with you
yeah,
guys the whole time. I mean, why would I not? I
yeah,
got to have fun with it. I
yeah,
love doing that. And yeah, I agree. I think that if you would blocked us off, there'd be no camaraderie between all of us. And I think there's
right,
something to say about that because we all had an intimate moment together. We're the first ones to do it on this new Smackdown. And even if you're not the first ones, every time whoever does it, there's an intimacy to the fact of we're throwing down side by side and it's a big deal. It's not a, you know what I mean? And that's, no one else is going to have that experience but the 8 of us in our teams.
Yeah. And I mean, let's be honest. Uh, we're not a bunch of children. Like, I want you to put out the best product that you can put out, and you want the same for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're not trying to steal stuff from the guy next to us. We're not trying to rob ideas.
Correct.
Or even
It's not like we're
tools.
changing shit up right now because we see what you're doing. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
And like, if you need something, absolutely, like, take it. Like, you know, I don't want you to not get your job done because you're missing this, that, and the other thing. If I have it, take it. You can use it. I'll help you. You know what I mean? If I can squeeze 5 minutes out, I'll come over and help you. Like,
Sure.
You know, that's one of the great things about the industry, that I don't think maybe you see everywhere else in all other, you know, areas. At least that's what I've found.
No, I agree with you. And even, you know, like an interesting thing I saw with you guys too was when you did the flag, I was like, okay, first of all, yes, really cool. Great idea. Why the hell did you do it in the back instead of the front? Like it threw me for a loop. I'm like, no one's going to see it. You're doing all this extra work and no one's going to see it. And well, obviously they did.
Yeah.
You know,
and the way that came about was we laid it out in the shop. You know, we put like tape down so we knew what the space of the area. And then we laid out the kitchen and the little pond thing in the front and stuff. And it was like, dang, you know, in the back here, we kind of got this like blank space. And the whole idea going into it was, well, let's cover as many aspects as we can. We know Rick's going to do some grinding and coloring and staining and stuff. So, you know, what can we do that would be a little bit of grinding and staining? You know, and so like we had this blank area. And so we went back and forth. We should do our logo. We should do Decorate's logo. No, you know, and then we landed on, we should do an American flag. Like everybody loves an American flag. Like,
correct.
That's what we should do, you know? Yeah. And so that was kind of how that came about. And then we had this little wood bench or wood table in underneath the grill. And what's funny is the flag and the little wood shelf, it was a live edge wood shelf. Everybody loved that. And as far as time and effort goes, like they were towards the bottom. You know, we did those pretty quick.
Well, it looked like you spent a lot of time on the flag. You guys were staining that forever with
the
little tiny brushes.
The staining took a little while.
It always does. Isn't that the craziest thing?
It's this big. You know what I mean?
I saw. I wish I
next time you talk to T, you got to rag on him because he's sitting there with a brush this big covering the blue, you know, above all the stars. And so he's like coloring in everything. And then the other guy that was with me, Brandon, comes over and he's like, hey, why don't we just like take this brush and just kind of go over the top of everything? You know, he was like,
that's what I was about to say. Yes.
Why didn't you show me that when I started? It's like he been coloring for like 45 minutes with a tiny brush, you know?
Yes. I was trying my hardest not to say anything because, you know, but that's one of those moments that I wish, looking back on it, I wish I would have come over and helped you guys with that. Now, you know, now looking back on it and reflecting on that moment, like it wouldn't have changed anything whether I helped you or not at that moment. I think I was even done practically at that possibly.
Probably,
but
yeah.
I wish I would have come over to help you guys stain that. And I was talking to one of your guys. Was it what you had? What was the names of the guys with you?
Josh, T, and Brandon was the
Brandon.
other guy.
I was talking to Brandon, and I was like, I said something about, you're not going to finish those shadows? And he goes, that's as much as we can do, man. I don't know, it might have been Josh, one of the two of them. He was like, that's as far as we can go. We're not going any farther with it. And I'm like, man, there's so much I could do with that for you right now. I almost wanted to.
Somebody said something to me like, oh, Rick came over and commented on the flag and the shadowing. I'm like, oh, of course he did.
Of course he did.
I was like, I think it looks good. You know?
It did. It looked good enough. And that's fine. It could have looked fantastic, but it looked good enough. And in the time period you had and everything, like you said, it was the least of your priorities.
Yeah.
And it did. It looked good enough. You know, I hate, how do I say this politically correct? The industry is not going to see those details.
Right.
They're not, especially in a competition. If you were doing this for a client, you would have taken that more serious. And you would have made sure those shadows were to die for.
And so that's a funny thing because I'll be doing stuff on a job and people are like, nobody's ever going to notice that. And what I'll say is, you're right. Nobody will notice this. The difference is they'll come look at our job and then they'll look at somebody else's job and it could be the same design. And they're going to say, you know what? I like theirs better. I don't know why, but I just like theirs better. So they don't notice that. They just know that it looks good and it looks right. You know what I mean? They don't see those small details, but in their mind, they're saying, well, for some reason, I like theirs better. It just looks better. I don't know what it is because they don't notice that small things, but they do really. You know, they don't know why, but they do notice them.
Oh, I completely agree, and I would take it a step further to your homeowner. See, this is the biggest thing for our what we do. Once we finish that job, we never see it again. We're gone. We're done. We're not living there. You know, like my biggest pet peeve is when I have a client that says, well, you're the artist, what would you do? I'm not living there. You are. You're paying me to do this. I could care less how far you want me to take it. It's about you, not about me. And you're paying me to do this. So I look at it the other way and go, I'm going to take these much details because they may not notice it for a couple months from now. But every time they look, they're going to catch something new. They're going to notice some extra detail. They're going to notice, holy cow, these guys did so much that I didn't realize they did. That's the beauty of it to me. That long-term idea that they're noticing more detail as it grows on them and as they live with it. To your point, the referral is never going to see that. The neighbor may not see it for a long time, but the person that lives there that's going to talk about you and show people what you did is going to all of a sudden one day go, check this out that they did. I didn't even notice this for a couple months. You know, that's the beauty of what we do is it's not immediate. There is a long-term growth mentally to what they see and visually and everything like that is so awesome about what we do. Especially when you're doing all this vertical stuff, you know, like the details to the rocks that you're doing is something that it's going to take a while for them to absorb. You know, it's compared to talking about doing a shadow on a flag. You know, that shadow is extremely important, and they're going to notice the detail of that shadow, but they're going to notice the texture of that stone and how accurate it is before they notice that shadow. I would assume I'm right on that, but you know, that's some of the different things about our industry that makes it so awesome. What other industry has all these variables and all this variety? Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And that was the whole idea of our booth, was just to try to cover all those different aspects of the industry, you know, and something that was not like we wanted the space to flow. You know what I mean? Didn't want it to be a bunch of like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. Oh, I've never seen that. We wanted it to be like,
but that doesn't go together. Yeah.
Cohesive.
Right.
Yeah. We wanted it to be cohesive. Like, you know,
right.
Man, I could spend my whole, you know, weekend back here. You know what I mean? Just sitting here looking at this because it's that cool.
Yep. Like one of my biggest compliments ever on one of my jobs was I had my concrete guy pour the concrete for this patio. We built sitting walls. And I did a vine design through the whole thing, up the walls, over the walls, the whole thing. Client, and it's been 15 years. I'm not kidding. I maintained this for 12 years until I retired. It's been almost 15 years since I did this project. He's never put furniture on it. It meant that much to him. And I'm like, why? The whole point to it was to put furniture over top of all these vines. And like I made it so that you could do whatever you wanted and there was always something flowing through it. And instead, he loved it so much, he left it as literally like it's a installation art piece that I did instead of another patio that I did. It was weird for me, but it's pretty cool.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
All the years that you've been doing this, the whole idea of you've never poured concrete, did that just become like a staple for you? I mean, because you could have learned to pour concrete. I mean,
I did learn to pour concrete. That doesn't mean I did it.
Right.
So
was it like a financial thing? Be like, it's cheaper for me, you know, just pay somebody else to come in and do it, or is it just like a principle thing? Like, well, I'm the artist, I do the design, I do the artwork.
No, it's principle. It is an ego, like everything else you've met with. We're not gonna deny that I have one of the biggest egos in the industry, and I try to control it. I try to keep it down as much as I can. I've worked really hard at trying to be careful about that and show confidence more than ego.
Yeah.
But it was, I have a master's in painting. I don't pour concrete.
Yeah.
Period. That's the bottom line to it. I have a master's in painting. I'm not a concrete guy.
Yep.
And that's the way my head was about all of it. And to your same point too, technically I had an in-house concrete guy for 15 of the 20 years, at least, if not more. When I first bought my company, because the Concrete Mystique existed for 6 years before I bought it. I had worked for them for 3.5 years, and then I bought the company.
Yeah.
I hired a concrete guy right after that to work, sub for me. But technically, I had a concrete division from that point on, because anybody that called and asked for concrete, I'd still refer them, and they would be my canvas maker. And I worked closely with him on what I wanted my canvas to be. And I went to those pours and watched them pour. I just didn't get my hands dirty. I just was the guy pointing and saying, fix this, do that. I know it sounds crazy, but no, that was my thing. I was like, I have no reason to do this. I have someone for this.
Yeah.
And vice versa. If he had a design that he needed done on a job, then he would refer me and I'd come in and he'd pour the concrete. And, it was just one of those things that we had a business commitment to each other, and I didn't have to do it. Yeah. And no, I don't want to. Like, I know how physically exhausting it is. I think you guys are all crazy.
Yeah.
It's not as crazy as a polisher. I think they're insane. Who wants to stand behind a grinder for 10 hours a day? I think you're insane. At least you guys are running all over the place, pouring this and doing that and stamping this. And there's a lot of excitement to it, and there's a lot of time to it, and there's a lot of it's crazy. It's never the same thing every single day for you. Right. But no, I didn't want to do that. One of the things about when I first took this job as a job was that I never picked up anything over 50 pounds. Yep. That was a selling point to me, because I was laying tile for like 7 years before that. And I was starting my own tile company in Savannah before I moved to Nashville. Yeah. And I was heavy labor. I did brick. I bricked an entire parking lot for a four condo little subdivision thing I made that my boss made. And I bricked the entire driveway. I'd never done brick before. Exhausting. I will never try to do that again. Hats off to them. That is brutal. Yeah. Brutal work. And so I looked at all that kind of stuff and was like, yeah, I don't want to go back to that. If I don't have to pick up anything over 50 pounds, I'm in heaven. And that was kind of my philosophy once I took the job with Concrete Mystique.
A lot of people would say you're smart for doing it that way.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'm the smart one. You've already learned that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, speaking of like your ego and all of that. Yeah. That was one of before we got out there and we were talking about the competition and stuff, our big thing is Rick going to win because he's Rick? Is it going to be a popularity contest because so many people and have such a huge following? We were like, he might, his design might be cool, but he might win just because it's Rick Lobdell and people are going to say, I'm voting for him. You know what I mean? So we didn't know what to expect on that part of it, because as far as we were concerned, you and Jeff Kurt would have been, I guess Rachel too, but
more Rachel actually, but no, I knew that. I knew all along the struggle it was going to be for me. I did. Yeah. I never told anybody that. It's really hard for me from an ego point of view because my ego was crushed. And it is what it is. It was crushed last time I did this with Decorative when Rachel got third instead of me. And in fact, actually to this point, a quick story is when we did the Brawl in the Fall in Charlotte, and I did this crazy hummingbird drinking out of a flower, all in full detail, without any stencils, without any I just walked in there, threw it down, and I was on top of the world, and I thought we were going to win and everything that was going on. Well, you had this guy that brought in all of these pieces of already pre-manufactured vertical carving and pieced together this giant wall. You had another lady that that did a fireplace, and every little piece was already pre-done, and she just glued the damn thing together and freaking won. And Rachel got third place. And because she had a really awesome Rubik's Cube melting, and if you sat in the right place, you could do a 1 point perspective picture, and it looked like you were sitting on top of a Rubik's Cube that was melting underneath you. Yeah. And it was genius. And so my ego was Rachel got third, the big rock wall got second, and when they were announcing first, I literally stood up to start walking forward.
Oh man.
And it wasn't me. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Right. So I'll never forget that. And I know there's no chance for what I do to actually win. That's what drives me crazy. And I learned through the years of all of my competitions that I did that if you don't do something vertical, no one cares. And not in a negative way. I'm not saying that they don't like what I do or anything like that. Obviously, I wouldn't be doing it if they didn't. But I learned the hard way. There was one year at World of Concrete where people were looking at what was going on next to me. I had 2 vertical projects going on each side of me, and I complained about it the whole time because no one even saw I existed, and they stepped on me tripped over me multiple times to look at what was going on over here and what was going on. They never noticed me because I had no vertical.
Right.
And it irritated me beyond belief. And I think it was a year or 2 later after that when I did the Concrete Cares booth is when I did the Pink Bunny. And I was like, we've got to have something vertical in everything we do because everybody pays attention to vertical more than they pay attention to the floor. Doesn't matter how amazing my design is. Yeah. The very first year I ever did any of these, I kicked everybody's ass with a 10-foot koi splashing the water all in metallic. That was the first time I entered and the only time I've ever won anything. Yeah. And then there wasn't even a competition. It was just that, like you're saying, the media behind it all. Clearly I won. That's what everybody was talking about. That's what everybody remembered. There was no issue with that. The next year was the first year I met Decorative. They were right beside me and they did the martini glass. And that destroyed everything. I mean, that was clearly, I mean, I was watching the amount of people reacting to that martini glass and everything like that. And that helped put them on the map in the beginning too. But when I did the Concrete Cares Bunny, I was like, I've got to do something vertical to get people to react to this booth and pay attention to it. It worked more than you could possibly imagine to the point that bunny made it on HDTV. I didn't. You know, I didn't know even who the guy was, but he came through with a camera and he was doing all this stuff and he interviewed the bunny. And I'm standing there watching going, what? Why didn't you ask who made it?
Right.
And they just zipped on through. So my freaking bunny made it on HDTV. I didn't, you know. So I learned all that through all of this. And that's why I did what I did. Because I was like, if I don't do something vertical for people to react to, I'm going to lose no matter what. And I'm not a vertical carver. I'm not a vertical overlay guy. You know, back to the beginning of this conversation, you have taken all these classes to do all these different things. Right. I do one thing. In this industry, you know, and like I tell people all the time, I act like I'm the greatest of all time, but we all know I'm not because I only do one aspect of this industry. I do it very well, not going to deny that, but I'm not Bob Harris who has poured the concrete, stamped the concrete, polished the concrete, stained the concrete, designed it just like and he can do everything. He can do everything. He's one of the greatest consultants of all time because he can do it all. Right. I can't do it all because I've never poured concrete and I don't want to. Yeah. I know everything about what happens inside the concrete. I can tell you all sorts of stuff that what's going on right now. Talk to Emil. You know, he's been, calling me constantly and getting advice about what's going on right now that he didn't even realize was a problem in concrete. And I know all this kind of stuff. And I laughed about that. We just talked the other day. I think it was Friday. And I was like, how funny is it that you're calling me asking all these questions and I don't even pour concrete, you know? Yeah. But it is what it is. And so I knew I had a very slim chance. But I was so appreciative of social media. I can't say it enough. All the people said I was going to win. You saw it all over the place. Well, but I was the only one posting about it.
Yeah, I had a guy come up to my booth and I was like, what do you think? And he goes, oh, that's pretty cool. And I was like, you think we got a shot? And he's like, nah, Rick still got it in the bag. he's like, I haven't seen it. And I think he commented on one of your posts. I think it was the same guy. He's like, no, my money's on Rick. And I was like, oh, all right. Fair enough.
I think that would, and then that's my takeaway from it.
Yeah.
You didn't have to win when you get that much of a reaction.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to. And I love the fact of the camaraderie between all of us. There was nobody out there with an attitude that was a dick. Not one of us had an attitude problem. And I think that helped also. If because I could have just been like, whatever. It doesn't matter how you look at it. There's so many ways to look at it. And I think the other point to that too is I'm really good in front of a camera. I'm really good in front of a live audience.
Yep.
And most of you guys are not used to that at all.
Nope. Definitely not. But I mean, like you said, hats off to Decorative though for putting it together the way they did and getting the collective group that they did, because there was no animosity. There was no. Everybody wanted to put out the best thing that we could put out for the sake of the people that were coming through. You know what I mean?
It was not a joke to anybody. Everybody took this extremely serious.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because of my social media posting about it or if it was just you were going to do it anyway. You can look at it both ways, because I was, from the get-go, I was posting about kicking everybody's butt and creating that hype and trying to draw that attention to it.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what matters and what doesn't. We'll see next year when I don't talk about it at all because I don't get to be a part of it. Who knows?
Yeah, I know Josh chimed in a little bit.
And
I said on the one poster, I was like, we'll see, Rick. You know what I mean?
I didn't even see that.
I'm not much of a social media guy. And I'm definitely not confident enough to talk trash. Way too green and new to the game to think that I'm anybody that's gonna.
Well, that was the biggest problem that Jeff and I took away from it during all of that was. We were fortunate that Josh was another person that was willing to do that, because nobody else was. All of you were, I'd rather be behind the scenes than in the camera. 100%, 6 out of the 8 would rather never be in front of a camera ever if they didn't have to be.
Right.
And Jeff and I knew that. And that's why I was fortunate, because to the same point, when Josh called me out at World of Concrete, what most people don't know is I went back the next day. Well, we know from the interview with him, but I went back the next day and he was still standing there. So I went up to him, introduced myself, and we started chatting. And both of us planned that. What happened next in front of Jeff? Jeff didn't know. We had it all planned out. I was like, I'm going to do this. Then you're going to do this. Then I'm going to do this. We didn't have it word for word, but we had the general idea of how we were going to talk shit to each other and build that hype. And no one else stepped up to do that at all. And if you don't, it's going to be hard to build your name even bigger if nobody knows what's going on. So it'll be interesting next year to see how that all plays out. Because now that you're the champ, are they going to call you out constantly? Are you going to step up and defend yourself? Or, here's the question for you that everybody wants to know. Are you even going to enter next year?
I have no idea. I haven't heard anything whether it's going to be 8 new contestants or
yes. It's going to be 7 new contestants unless you say no.
I haven't heard anything about us going back to compete again.
Mm-hmm. That was the plan the entire time, was the winner always comes back.
They
did that with Brawl in the Fall too. It's always been that the winner gets to come back and everybody else has to be new. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't go help somebody else. It can't be my name on it.
Yeah.
Which I've already got it planned. I've already got it planned out for next year with somebody. I've already got it all planned for. I'm ready to go for you. I'm ready to take you on already.
I never even said I was going back, so.
Not just saying, but we want to know right here, right now. The audience wants to know: are you going to do this again?
I have no idea. Possibly.
Why? Why possibly?
Well, I mean, it's a lot of time and effort.
Okay, let me clarify something here for you real quick. How many times have you done stuff with Decorative over the last couple of years?
I mean, quite often.
Okay. And I'm talking about the show specifically,
Yeah.
not the classes, but the show specifically.
Every year.
Because last year you did a giant baseball, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You've come to the show for the last how many years in a row?
Quite a few, 5, 6 years, something like that. Probably.
So you have already planned that you're going to the show anyway.
I'll definitely be there. Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're already taking the time. You're already bringing the employees. You're already doing it anyway. It's already costing you time. What's the difference?
The prep work and I know you know this. You really don't get to enjoy the show much.
No, of course not. But you haven't for the last couple of years. So what's the difference? You didn't last year either.
No, last year was more laid back. I mean, last year we did those softballs, and you know, it was not a time crunch. It wasn't like a balls to the wall. So yeah, we definitely got to enjoy the show a lot more. Not to say that it was more fun, because this year was pretty awesome, but it's just different. And I'm not saying that I won't do it. What I'm saying is that I will run it by the guys, and if they say, yeah, let's do it again, then we'll be there. If they're like, you know what, I'd rather go and just hang out and be able to actually talk to everybody and all that, then I might pass. I don't, it's not a dictatorship around here.
Sure.
I always like to take their input. I mean, obviously I have the last say, but, I like to see what they think about it. I might be like, I'm not really feeling this. And they might be like, no, dude, we got to go. And I'll be like, all right, fine, let's do it. You know what I mean? We'll see. I got to come up with some ideas between now and then too. I mean, what am I going to build? I don't know.
Like I said, I'm already ready to go. I've already come up with my idea for next year. Let's go.
Oh, so you're going to team up with us?
No.
Oh,
no, to take you on.
All right. Well, we'll see. You got somebody in mind that's going to do your vertical work? Because we already know that.
I've already got it all taken care of. I've already planned it. It's going to be hilarious.
Yeah.
But
right.
I'm not doing something that's relatable. I don't care. That's my thing, and I don't care if I win or lose. Again, well, it's not me this time anyway. It's going to be somebody else's name. But It's not about winning or losing. It's about okay. Let's rephrase this conversation for a second. How many of the entries actually were stuff that could have been done on a real job site? It's a tough question. Putting you on the spot on this one.
So probably 3, maybe 4.
Maybe 3.
3.
I'm not including myself. It's not that couldn't have happened if a museum or a very specific place wants to do something crazy like I did. And that's why I did it. I wanted it to get out there that there's this other form of things you can do with concrete and things like that. When it comes to doing like just display, like I kept reiterating the bean in Chicago. I don't know if you've ever been to Chicago.
Yeah.
But in the downtown Chicago, there's this giant bean and it reflects everything off of it everywhere around you. But you have to do something that's so big. Like for me to have accomplished my goal, I would have needed to 50, 80, 100 feet around me all to myself so that mirror flooded all the way up it.
Right.
It's the only way it would have worked. And I didn't. That's where I took a chance. So, yeah, I would agree with you. There was 1, 2, I would say 3.
3.
I would say 3. Maybe 4 if you count Jeff Kurt, because that is legit.
Right.
But yeah, that's all I would say. The rest of it was all make-believe. And there's nothing wrong with that. The beauty of that is that idea of dreaming big and seeing what can happen for those rare jobs. once in a million that you're going to get a job that's going to want to do those things. There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, that was the reason why you won, was it was something that was functional, that someone could go, I can see that being on a job site. I can see that kitchen. I can see that floor. I can see that flag. Everybody else's was like so over the top. It was like, well, no one would ever hire me to do that. What was the point to it?
Yeah.
And
I think there's a fine line somewhere in there.
yeah, I agree.
You know what I mean?
I agree. And that's why I still want to push the envelope and show people how far you can take this stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know. I was just happy to be a part of it. I mean,
I know, but that you can't say that now, because now you're the champ. It's not about just being a part of it. Now you're the champ. So are you going to defend your title, or are you going to walk away always being the champ? I mean, you're always going to be the champ either way, because you finally want, just like any other sport, boxing, UFC, however you look at it. Once you win the championship, you're still always the champ, even when you get knocked down and you're no longer number one. But are you going to ride off into the sunset and never have anybody take you down? Or are you going to step up and be a 2-time champ?
I'm not sure we could win it twice, but
it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
It's a tough competition. That's yes.
Well, our original plan was to do it with Emil, and I called him and I said, Emil, did you hear about the Smackdown thing that they're doing? And he said, yeah, and I said, all right, well, like, are you going to put a team in? You want us to help you? Whatever. And, he was super busy at the time. He's like, I don't know, I got to get through this, and this, and then I'll think about it. And so I mentioned it to him, and he's like, I still haven't talked to those guys. I don't know yet. I said, okay. And then Jeff called me, and he's like, hey, what do you guys think? Did you hear about the Smackdown? I said, yeah. I said, it sounds really cool. And he was like, well, do you think you might want to put a team in? And I was like, well, honestly, I said, I assumed Emil was going to put a team in, and I was waiting to talk to him to see about doing it with him. And I said, let me call him, and I'll get back to you and let you know. And he said, okay. So I called Emil, and I was like, hey, Jeff just called me, and he's wondering what our plan is. And Emil was like, yeah, I think you guys should do it. And I was like, I know. So, like, are you in? And he's like, no, I think you guys should do it on your own. And he's like, it should be your name. It should be, you and your guys. And he's like, I think that you guys should do this without me. And, I was like, well, it's not really what I wanted to hear, but I was like, all right. And so I hung up with him, and we were in the shop, and I asked the guys, I said, Emil's out. I said, do you guys want to do it? I got to get back to Jeff. I said, do you guys want to do it? And they said, yeah, why not? Let's do it. So I said, okay. So I called Jeff back, and I said, yeah, we're in. And that was kind of how that went. But it was pretty cool. I think that, we've been a student of Emil's since we started. And I thought it was kind of cool of him to say, you know what, put your name on it. He kind of had that idea that, like, I've been watching you guys progress. You're to the point where we can do it without him and put out a good product. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Something that we could compete with. And so that was pretty cool of him to say, I'm not doing this one. You guys do it,
I agree with you. I mean, Emil's an amazing person, first and foremost, without a question. Yeah. And I was the same way. I struggled with that too. I didn't know if it was time for me to step back for a second and let everybody else do it, or do it one more time, because I'm getting up there in that age where it's hard for me to, I was exhausted physically.
I'm sure
I could barely walk because I don't do this every day anymore.
Yeah.
That was really hard for me to decide. And I did it anyway, because I'm like, well, I'm only going to have a few more times. Let's go.
Yeah.
I ended up being the very first entry. I don't know if you knew that or not, but I was like,
I did not know that,
the very first entry right after they brought it up. And when the deadline opened, I called Jeff, and I talked to each other, and I was like, well, I was thinking about doing this idea, and I did a mock up, and I sent him whatever, or tell him what I was going to do. And he was like, so does that mean you're in? And I'm like, I think so. And he goes, okay, well, you're the first official entry. And I'm like, what? I didn't even do a mock up yet. He goes, it's all right. You're good. And I'm like, Okay, great.
Well, they know. I mean, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
it's not
they
gonna
know
it's not
everything
a
about me.
surprise. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's cool. And I talked about that with my team about, should it be my name or whatever. And that's why we did it the way we did it, so that they can enter next year and I can help them out if they want me to and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, and Jeff and I have already talked about next year and everything like that too, because if I'm not doing a demo for the first time ever, what am I going to do?
You give me a lifeline.
They don't need me. I don't do vertical.
You can come do the shadowing right on our flag.
Well, yeah, yeah. It still looked good. It looked fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
It looked fine. It had just enough.
Right. Well, the shadowing was a question mark to begin with. I was like, all right, that looks pretty good. And they're like, well, I was like, should we take the time to get the airbrush out, unpack it, and do some shadowing?
It's the hardest part about shadowing is it's really hard to do with a brush. You do need an airbrush to do it. Yes, you're right.
But I am glad we did. It looked a lot better with just the little bit that we put into it.
I agree. Especially because I took a picture of it. So I had a really good picture that I took of it. And you're right. The hardest part about what we do is sometimes it looks better in a photo than it does in person.
Yeah.
And your flag looked amazing in a photo because you weren't you could see it better. I don't know how to explain it, but visually you could see it better. And it had a nice pop to it because of it. It really did. Yeah. It just would have had more if I had time for you.
Next year.
You
got to be
always next year.
You got to be a lifeline.
Does that mean you're entering next year?
Possibly. It's a good possibility. We'll see.
Well, awesome, man. Well, I want to thank you for your time. I've had a great time catching up with you. Over the years, we really have not talked much.
Well, I was hoping that, Friday shots with Jeff, I would get the invite, but, we'll see.
Hey, that's why I posted about that. More people are more than welcome to join us if you want me to chime in on that. Yeah. It's a good time. But I got one more story to tell everybody before we leave. I have forgot about this. I meant to bring this up in the beginning, but it is one of the best stories of all my training classes. And you know where I'm going with this. and I got to throw it in my face and point out that ego. And you're the one person that got to slap me in the face of all time. And it is the greatest story. It's one of the best.
Yep.
But I have to remind everybody, just so they don't know, that when you mix all the colors in the world, you get white. And when you mix 0 colors, you get black. And I thought it was the opposite.
The absence of color, yep. Which is funny, but, I'm standing there talking to T, and I'm like, I don't think that's right. I'm like, if you mix all the colors, it's white. And remember, and you were saying the opposite. And T's like, really? And I was like, I'm pretty sure, but like, I don't know. And he's like, say something. So I was like, I think that's backwards. I was like, I think black is the absence of color. And if you mix all of them together, you get white.
Yeah. And we had to look it up to clarify that I was wrong for once. I almost never admit that I was wrong. But
it's too bad I didn't know you better, because then I really would have, I would have thrown it in your face. But I was still pretty new back then, and
you did enough, and you've done enough over the next year or two that you kept reminding. I think that's going to be a funny joke between the two of us forever. And because no one has ever caught me on a lie, even though I thought I was right, it wasn't a lie. I thought I was right, and I was dead opposite. Hey, I'm colorblind. It happens. I know that point to it all where I did the exact opposite. I always tell people I have dyslexia of color, so I literally said the exact opposite of white and black.
Right.
And I questioned myself the whole time, going, "Am I saying that right?" And I had to think for a second, and I'm like, I could have swore that's the way I was trained, because in my head, and I did this a couple years ago when Decorative moved to the place out in Worcester, to the agricultural center or whatever it was. We didn't have a black. I was trying to do a shadow and there was no black. So I went over to Rachel and I said, what do you have? And I took the colors that she had and I made black. So in my head, I make black by mixing a certain group of colors.
Right.
You can't mix colors to make white. So that's where my head was. It wasn't about the prism and how light hits it. It was literally, I can mix colors to make black. I can't mix colors to make white. And that's where my head was in that moment. I forgot about what light actually does. It's the exact opposite with what light actually does. And I could have shot myself for being that far off. I was completely off. So, just want to give you another little egotistical boost and shout out, because no one has ever corrected the master and actually been right.
Well, it's a good story. Yep.
But anyway, so I want to thank you for taking the time. I've had a great time with you. If you want to do this again, let me know. Want to talk about before the Smackdown next year if you enter.
Sure.
Whatever you want to do, you're always welcome. And let me know when you're going to come to Nashville and hang out on top of that too.
Nashville is definitely on the agenda. We want to go back there. Yeah, for sure. It's one of my favorite places to go.
It's awesome. I love it here. And I'm a good tour guide.
Sounds good to me, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much. And you have a great night, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thanks for having me, Rick.
I want to thank the Decorative Concrete Expo for sponsoring this show. Follow me on all social media platforms. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thank you for listening and have a great day. We have David Rebello, the 2025 Smackdown winner, on the show today. We have David Rebello on the show today.